Hey everyone, thanks for popping over to see how I created my Phoenix from the Flames piece. The mould itself is from the Craft Hut and we have a discount in our featured tab on Resin Supplies Den on Facebook. The mould was dusted with chameleon or colour shift mica. I think I used 4 different colours for this. It was like everything from sort of black, gold, purple, gold, very sort of deep dark colours, and I tried to highlight different areas of the Phoenix to try and give it a bit of interest. First time really I'd done such a complicated mould with so much chameleon powder. So in preparation for the board, this is just a plain canvas, nothing special. I overpainted it, although it was black to begin with. I painted over it with gesso just to give it a bit of strength, a bit more resistance to the resin seeping through. So let that dry off. I then flicked some tiny bits of gold mica, which is what you can see just towards the bottom of the screen, which is obviously the top of the piece. So you're looking at everything upside down. And then I've poured over that a clear translucent black, so making it have the slight black tinge to it just softens everything and gives it a little bit of depth. So you see I've poured just a couple of milliliters of resin, and I've split it up into the little pots, mixed it up with various colours, all colours that you would associate with fire, basically, and perhaps a few that you wouldn't, which you'll see in a few minutes. And so that is a yellow paste, and then we've got some mica, we've got some floating gold mica, we've got red, I think is a paste. So I've used micas, I've used pastes just to give it a different texture and bit of different depth, because if you do everything paste or everything mica, it can look a bit samey, and what we really want to create is this illusion of depth with this piece. So pouring it onto the translucent black, which is still unset, that's literally just been done and heated over with a heat gun just to remove any bubbles. Pouring it over that, the idea is that's going to blend with that, it's going to soften the lines, soften the colours, and we'll give it a blast with the heat gun after we've moved it around a little bit. But you want it still to remain with a certain amount of colour. You don't want it all to disappear. Now, unfortunately, the copper coloured mica powder that you can see there, sort of orangey, it just wasn't strong enough. It was so translucent. When I poured it on over that yellow, it just disappeared. You can very, very faintly see it over the top, but we want it to be there. We want the colour to be seen. So I've just mixed up a little bit more. I've added a bit more mica powder in there, given it a good mix, and it's going to be much more of a solid colour. So I didn't realise, I hadn't checked it against the side of my little cup to see how see-through it was before I poured it on. Just went gung-ho, you know, sometimes as we do. I did this, chose this method. This was, I knew what I wanted to create. I had in my mind's eye what I wanted to make. And basically had a look on YouTube to see how other people had done it. So this is a sort of variation on their theme. Similar colours, similar method, but it's all a learning curve, isn't it? It's all a question of learning what works, what doesn't, and going with the flow. So you can see that copper colour now is a much stronger colour going over that yellow, really visible, really easy to see. It doesn't matter if you layer them one on top of each other, doesn't matter if you do a stripe of yellow at the bottom, then the stripe of copper, and then the next colour, and then so moving further up the piece or down as it appears to you. They will all find their own path eventually, and we're going to mix things up anyway shortly. This is the floating gold. I've not used too much. I'm not crazy with that. I just wanted it again to give it a little bit of depth, a little bit of something different, a little bit of standoutiness, just to create a bit of interest in the piece, really. So it's not all just flat colour. The bright red is just a paste. It is definitely kind of pillar box red. What you might tend to think of when you think of flames and fire is your reds, yellows, oranges. You wouldn't necessarily put a floating gold in there, would you? And you also wouldn't necessarily put white. Now I'm putting a layer of white above where I've just put the red, but not a huge amount. This is just to give it some highlights, just to give it a bit of shape, a bit of form, contrast, just to make the flames stand out. As you can see, I've only done a sort of drizzle backwards and forwards, and then there's another colour coming up right now, which again you probably wouldn't associate, and this is a really deep purple mica. It's a very sort of rich sort of royal mica powder. Again, it's got that shimmer that you get from a mica, but it's got that depth in colour as well, and when it goes on you'll see it's very, very close to the black. And that's really about softening the colours into the background. And you'll see how it stands out later on. You'll see what a difference it makes. Obviously, if you're thinking of using this technique, you'll find your own colours, just like I did. I never ever tried anything like this before. I had previously poured resin onto canvas with some degree of success, but nothing that I would ever dare share with anybody. It was really one for my wall only, or to, as I like to do, paint over them or scrape it off and reuse the canvas. So you can see there in this shot, you've got your nice rich purple colour. It's really a very deep, almost blue purple. And again, I'm not going crazy mad with this, just a little bit, enough to give it, this is me deliberating, oh, do I pour it here, what do I do? Sometimes you just got to go for it, you've just got to have a try, see what it looks like. I sometimes tend to overthink things. So just a really thin line across the top, and you can see, like I said, it's virtually disappeared against that black. But really, it's just that hint of purple shimmer that's going to make the difference. And then next, a bright blue, a really bright blue. You can see it there as I put it under the camera. So that's my paints laid down. My resin's laid down. I'm going to do lally today. That's my resin's all laid down in the different colours. Now what you want to do is move them around. Now this is I'm not sure if this is necessary or not, having done it, to be honest. This is essentially the backing of a sheet of labels, of which I use a lot of. I keep them in my craft room anyway. I don't like to throw them away if I can use them, because I've got that nice waxy finish, which means resin peels off them nice and easily. So I use them as drip trays, drip mats. I use them to move pieces from my work area to my curing area, because you can hold them nice and sturdy, obviously as long as it's not bigger than A4. So yeah, all I've done is torn a piece off. Want to make sure the end's kind of irregular. I don't want a nice straight line, because I'm going to use a straight line. I might as well use a spatula or something like that to do the next bit. So, but what we've got here then, we've got the black canvas, we've got the speckled sort of mica powder underneath, on top of that. Then we've got our layer of clear, translucent black over that, and then on top we've poured our colours. So all I'm doing here is manipulating the coloured resin up the piece in a rough, very rough flame shape. I'm varying the pressure that I'm putting on it. So you can see at the bottom I'm pressing quite hard to, well, not quite hard, but harder, so I can drag it up. And as I get towards the top, I'm sort of lifting that piece of waxy paper away, just so the flames peter out as they would naturally, realistically. It's a bit of a boring process to watch. Basically, all I'm doing is dragging it up. I'm twisting the paper as I go. So I've speeded up the video a bit here for you to save a little bit of time. Trying not to be too specific about, oh, I've not got a flame there, or I've not got a bit of flame here. Trying to keep it random, but as I'm sure you all know, when you try and make something random, it just doesn't always work out like that. I'm thinking, there's a big gap there. I've not got any yellow. No, nothing's come up. I need a taller bit here. So I'm dragging it from the bottom. So through the yellow, through the red. At this point, all I can see is like yellow at the bottom, big blobs of red. I'm thinking, I need to mix it up. I need to merge these colours together a little bit. In doing so, as you'll see later, I've promptly pushed a lot of the coloured resin off the side of my canvas, and it's at this point dripping down off the bottom. But hey, it still works. It still works. So again, using varied pressure, not necessarily going in hard at the bottom, then soft to the top, not necessarily starting at the bottom, dragging to the top. Then I put in the heat gun, and you'll see what happens immediately. As soon as I start applying heat and the air starts moving it around, the colours start to blend, the colours start to move. Because they're pastes and micas, they're different thicknesses, different densities, they start to move around and things start to become a little bit more interesting. Now I think I went a bit over the top with my heat gun on this. As you can see, it's not a sort of DIY heat gun, it's just a normal, it's one that I've had from way back that I used for card making. I'm sure a lot of you have been there, done that before. And as I've sort of blended it all out with the heat gun, it's lost some of its definition. So what I've thought is we'll give some slight little blue flashes. So I've literally got a cocktail stick there, I'm dipping it in, dragging it through. At that point, there's no blue left on there. It's just, I was just trying to separate it and move the colours around a little bit. And likewise with the other colours that I'm adding here, just to separate those blocks of colour, if you like. So I've gone back in with the copper colour here, which looking at it now, I think perhaps wasn't necessarily the best move. But because I've got the red and the white at the bottom, it's got a bit of pinky tinge to it, and I wasn't overly keen. So at this point, what I'm trying to do is rescue it, I guess. Not having much confidence in what I'm doing at all. I'm just throwing stuff at it now. So out came the yellow, out came the white, just to try and lift it a little bit, because it just seemed a little bit pink, I guess, a bit sort of salmony coloured. You know, all those bits that you can see in the centre, everything seemed to be the same colour. And again, I think that's probably because I'd sort of shoved it about a bit too much with the waxy paper, and then I'd blown it all together with the torch, so all with the heat gun. So all I'd done is sort of mixed the colours together rather than having separate streaks of colour, I suppose is what I was after. So again, I'm going in with the cocktail stick just to highlight some bits, again in that vague, very vague sort of flame shape. I don't think that's essential, to be honest. Then I've gone a bit Bakewell tart here. I've got a bit Mr. Kipling with my feathering. I've gone a bit mad. Bought the paper out again, immediately made some gaps. Not sure if that's a good thing or not. Obviously my paper was a bit too stiff. And again, all I seem to be doing there is blending that red with that white and creating that strange sort of brick colour. At this point, I'm thinking, oh, this is all going in the bin. I'm going to scrape it off. Another experiment gone wrong. But it doesn't turn out that bad in the end, as you'll see. So what I'm just essentially trying to do is just manoeuvre it so it looks half decent at this point. So it looks a bit flame-like. You can see that blue is spreading nicely all by itself. It's not been touched in any way at this point, until I get the heat gun on it here. And that, just putting the heat gun on it, just softens it a little bit, makes it blend a little bit more. See, I'm going too heavy with that. It's creating ripples, which is really not what I wanted to do. That there's just a bit of a disaster. Although we want sort of vagueness, we don't want a sort of galaxy effect, which to me is what we're getting here. I've started to go into panic mode. I think I've started to think that, just bear in mind that this is double speed, and this was actually the second thing that I poured with this resin. So I'm starting to panic about flash cures here. I'm starting to think it's all going to go wrong. It's all going to get, I mean, obviously it's very thin. It's not like it's a massive piece, but the resin's starting to go off. It's beginning to cure, it's beginning to get thick. And of course, once you get that thickness, you lose the ability to manipulate it and move it around. So I gave my piece a little wipe around the edges. That's just testament to how much resin was falling off the edge because I pushed it around and sort of blown it towards me rather than away from me to try and cover some of those gaps at the bottom. I did a little bit more of the floating gold, and glad I did this when I looked at the end result, because I think it really did lift it. So if you've not got that, then hop onto Resin Supplies then on Facebook. Give Jade a little tag or ask on there if you're not familiar with how the group works, because it's fantastic stuff to work with. You only need the smallest amount in your resin and it really does lift your pieces. So again, just trying to blend those in a little bit being the operative word here. I must apologise for my croaky voice, by the way. I'm recording this at 20 to 4 in the morning, which is, you know, what I do. So, looking at it at this point, I've put my thumb in the corner and literally lifted all the resin off, which is what I'm trying to sort out there. Looking at it at that point, I'm really not seeing any flames at all. I'm just seeing a reddy, pinky, salmony mess with some blue bits and some floating gold. So I think it's about this point where I decide that, you know, I should probably stop messing with it and just accept it for what it is. A bit of a quick cleanup. A bit of a quick cleanup with my gloves around the edge. Now I have taped around the edge. It's got dam tape around the edge, and then it's got masking tape under the back, which you'll see later when it's all cured. So it shouldn't be a problem. And it's also stood on my little favourite recycling number, which is little pizza tables. You get pizza delivered. They're what stops the box lid smashing your pizza to pieces. So yeah, I collect the little pizza tables, reusable. So you can see what I got there. I'd got those sort of taped onto the masking tape. The masking tape was really just because I was tight with the dam tape. I split the dam tape in half. Don't need a full width, so I put a craft knife down it dodgily. So I've taken the pizza tables off. I've taken the masking tape off, wrapped it around me, because that's the way I roll. And then we've got the piece. That's how it's come out. So that's the right way up to you guys now, with the gold, floating gold and blue bits nearer to me. So peeling the masking tape off now. Sorry, not the masking tape, the dam tape. What had happened is on that side there, it was a really thick area. And as the resin had spread and cured, it actually run in between the dam tape and the canvas. So I've got a really thick, on the left hand side there, you can see there's a really thick part, which I had to trim back. So I ended up trimming all the way around the edge of the canvas. Again, a learning curve for me. I know not to put so much resin on next time. There's the little phoenix. That's the idea. And here is the finished product. Hope you've enjoyed this little tutorial. Picked up some hints and tips. Don't forget to give us a like and subscribe, and pop over to Resin Supplies down and give us your support.